Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I am card making with Good Fortune Horse. This is a new stamp and die set from Spellbinders, and it would be perfect for the upcoming Lunar New Year, which is the year of the fire horse. So this stamp and die set has 4 different sentiments with it. Perfect for the Lunar New Year as well as other occasions. We have Charge into New Adventures with Bold Spirit, Hope Your Year is Wild and Free, Sending You Endless Joy and Good Fortune, and Cheers to a Strong and Spirited New Year. So I think that could work for a bunch of different occasions or different reasons for creating and sending cards. For my first card, I'm going to create 2 in this video. I have the horse die cut out of some Fawn Cardstock, and I did a little bit of light ink blending around it using Vintage Photo Distress ink. I didn't do a lot, but I just wanted to give a little bit of visual dimension and just a little bit of that ink blending touch. So there are different pieces for the horse. There's the main body, and then there are 2 separate legs that get attached behind it, as well as the second ear for the horse. And then we have the mane and the tail. So the hooves that get glued onto the bottom of the horse's legs, I have them die cut out of some Truffle Cardstock. You could also do raven or black cardstock here as well. They're really, really tiny. They're perfect for using up some cardstock scraps. For this horse, I'm using some specialty cardstocks from the Aquamarine Treasured Cardstock pack. I'm using both the pearl as well as the matte for the mane, the tail, and the saddle. And the saddle has 2 different layers to it. So for one of the layers, I'm using the pearl, and one of the layers, I'm using the matte, just so there's a little bit of difference in finish, but not in color. I love the fact that both the mane and the tail have 2 different layers to them. They get layered on top of each other. So it's got a little bit of natural visual dimension with that, and those hair strands, if you will, from the mane as well as the tail overlap each other. So it has a really unique look to it that I absolutely love. Now I'm doing some unique colors. You wouldn't necessarily see some aquamarine for the mane and the tail for the horse, but I always love when card making or with card making that you can get creative with your color choices and whatnot. So after all of these pieces are layered together, we have our finished die cut element. I'm going to set that aside to let that glue finish setting, and I'm going to create the background for this card. For this one, I'm using the Wishing Stars embossing folder along with the Falling Stars press plate. These are 2 pieces that work well together, or you could use them separate if you want, but I wanted to use them together for this because I want to do some interference inks for my background. I thought it would be a really nice complement to the unique horse. So I'm using my BetterPress system here with that Falling Stars press plate, and I'm working on some Hammermill cardstock for this background, taping it to the clear plate of my BetterPress system. For those stars, I'm going to ink them with some black Soot distress ink. You could use whatever ink you want, but because I'm using some interference inks, they look different on white cardstock or light cardstock than they do on black or dark. So we're playing with those properties with this background. So I'm going to be using 2 different interference inks. One is Sunset Pink, which is a bright, bold pink that has the interference property of gold to it. And I'm also using Galaxy Dream, which is a beautiful bluey, purpley color, perfect for skies, but it also has a pink interference to it. So I think they're going to work well together. So I'm starting off with that Sunset Pink. I absolutely love this pink tone. When you tilt this into the light, you see that interference color, which is a gold shimmer to it. So you even see that on the light color, but on the dark color, you're not going to see the pink as much as you're going to see the gold. So we're going to see a sky here that is pink, but when you tilt it into the light, you're going to see more gold stars to it. Then I'm going to use that Galaxy Dream. These inks dry really quite quickly, so you can see that I'm dipping my brush into the ink very, very often, and that's because the ink has already dried on the paper. The Galaxy Dream Run, I probably should have re-inked it before filming the video, but I tend to prefer working with these when they're a little bit drier anyways. I'd rather add more layers of ink than accidentally get too much on at once, which is one of the reasons why I tend to leave my pads a little bit on the drier side and re-ink and add more layers to each of the backgrounds. As I'm adding that Galaxy Dream, I am muting some of the areas with that sunset pink as I'm blending them, just because that Galaxy Dream is going on top of it, kind of darkening it. So once I'm done as much of that as I want, I'm going to go back with the sunset pink and add more of that pink to some of those lighter areas and just brighten some of those areas up. When you're doing this, there's a point where it just looks like a hot mess and it looks like it's not going to work out, but keep working at it, because so often once they're done, it just creates such incredible looks for the background. And because this is a background where not only are we doing this, but I plan on embossing it, and then I'm going to do a little bit of ink over top of it. This is a subtle part of the background. We're going to see some of those colors, but we're not going to see if you did a perfect job with your ink blending, which is part of the fun of it. These backgrounds with these interference inks have such a wow factor to them because of that beautiful shimmer, that I think they're pretty forgiving when it comes to not needing to be perfect. So I take my background there and I put it in the embossing folder. There are directions on that press plate packaging on the back of it showing you how it fits into the embossing folder if you want it to look like the front of the packaging. Once I have that in there, I'm going to put this back on my sticky mat, and I'm going to take the Lisa Horton gold ink pad. This is from the trio of ink pads that have the gold, silver, and copper to them. And I'm just going to lightly brush over the background. The majority of the ink is going to go on those raised stars, but I am going to get streaks of that gold in that background, but it's going to coordinate with the gold shimmer from that sunset pink pad. And I just kind of like the streaks in that sky. I think it looks kind of interesting. So I did that on purpose. If you want it to go only over those upper stars, you just need to be really, really careful. Be very light-handed with your inking with that pad, because that is a foam pad. It has a lot of give to it. For my mat for my cards, I'm using the pearl finish of that Aqua Treasured Cardstock pack. This is the piece that I die cut some of the pieces of the mane and the tail out of. Once we have our embossed and BetterPress background right over top of it, you're never going to know anything was die cut from it. So that piece was trimmed down to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 inches. The pressed and embossed piece was trimmed down to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. I'm using one of the coordinating stamp sets in this set to stamp a sentiment on the inside of my card, and I'm using the Galaxy Dream interference ink to do that stamping. By doing it in the Misty stamping tool, I can stamp it multiple times to build up the ink. And then when I'm inking my stamp with that pad, because it is a foam pad, I can be light-handed with it. I don't have to worry about getting perfect coverage that very first stamping. So I also don't have to worry about getting too much ink by pressing too hard that first stamping. With the sentiment on the inside done, I can add those layers to the front of my card, and then I can add my sentiment. Now, I didn't put the sentiment on the front of the card because of the BetterPress embossed and the interference background. I didn't think it was going to be very visible, so that's why I left it on the inside. You could do, say, a sentiment strip on the front of the card that goes over top, and then put a sentiment on that if you wanted it on the front of the card and you wanted it to be visible. But I always like sometimes when there's an interesting sentiment on the inside of the card as well. For the second card, I will put my sentiment on the front. So for my second card, I have the mane and the tail, as well as the upper layer from the saddle piece die cut out of white cardstock. I'm going to use some black soot distress ink to do ink blending on just part of those pieces there. Once I have that black soot on there, I'm going to move them on my mat, and I'm going to put that sunset pink interference pad on top of them. I'm going to cover that. So we're still going to see the properties of the interference. It's going to look more gold on the black color, and then it's going to be pink on the white cardstock. But on that pink, we're also going to tilt it and be able to see that gold shimmer as well. So we're going to have just a beautiful shimmer for the tail and the mane, but with a dual color because of the black underneath there. If you wanted and only wanted the pink to be visible, you could just omit doing the ink blending with the black and just do that ink blending with the pink, and it would look fantastic as well. For the body for this horse, it's die cut out of some Truffle Cardstock. I wanted to do one horse that was light and one horse that was dark, so that's why I chose the Truffle for this one. And then for the hooves at the bottom of the legs, I chose just some Raven cardstock. And again, those pieces are tiny, so you could just do cardstock scraps of your black cardstock. Another thing I think would be fun is to do, say, a metallic, like a gold or silver metallic. I think that would be fun for the hooves as well. But I opted to go for something a little bit more basic because I have something a little bit out of it, or out of the box, for the mane as well as the tail. So once I have those pieces on there, we can glue on the mane. For both the mane and the tail, there's one piece that's a little fuller than the other piece. I don't think it really matters which one you put on top of the other one. I think I've done it both ways now. And it just looks great no matter what because of those different layers adding that extra bit of dimension. You can pick and choose which way you want it to go. But I do love that each one of those has the 2 layers to it. For the base part of the saddle for this horse, I just did it with black cardstock. I thought it would be a nice contrast with the black shading on the saddle as well as the mane and the tail. I have that all together so we can set that aside, and I'm going to create my background for this card. So I thought it would be fun to do a distress style background for this card, but I really love the shimmer in the background. So I'm going to be using the Alchemy and Metallic set here, the Alchemist set. This one is a new one from Lisa Horton Crafts. There's 3 different pads in here. We have a natural pearl that I've used in several videos. I can't seem to stop using it. I love it because on light or white cardstock, it just gives it a shimmer. On black or dark cardstock, you get a shimmer, but you also get that little bit of white haze. There's also a platinum pad in here as well as a rose gold pad, and they just make a beautiful combination of colors with the 3 of them together. So I am using Tim Holtz Media Mat here. I've pushed down each one of those pads, making sure they don't touch. I don't want to contaminate the actual pad. I want to do all of my blending on this media mat. And the cardstock that I'm using is mixed media Heavystock. It can handle the moisture that we're going to give it, and it can handle the different layers. Between each of these layers, I'm going to dry my piece with the Heat It tool. I also misted the ink with some water before starting. We want to add a little bit of liquid so those inks blend together. As the ink dries and as I take ink from my mat, there's going to be more droplets and less kind of pools of ink. And that's where we're going to get the distressed background. But the cool thing with this distressed background, because we're using the pearl and metallic pads, those layers that have heavier areas of ink are going to have some gorgeous shimmer to it. We're not going to have all over shimmer over that whole background, but we're going to have kind of different levels of shimmer to it. And it just makes a really interesting background. Now I'm doing all 3 pads here that have a shimmer to them. This also works well to mix say distress inks or oxide inks with it. So you could do some distress ink or oxide ink and then do some metallic or pearl pads or even interference pads. They look fantastic together, adding the different types of ink with the little bits of or the little veins of shimmer in it. Really, really pretty. But for this particular one, I just really wanted to see a background created with these pads together. When I'm dipping these pieces into the ink, as my layers are layering, as they're building, I am looking for areas that needs a certain color. So if I have an area that has more of the rose gold and white, I'll go and put a little bit of the platinum there. Or if I have an area that has more of the platinum, I'll go put a little bit of the rose gold or something on there. Just a little bit of contrast and kind of balancing the amount of each color that's all the way around it. The fun part about these distress style backgrounds is you could do the same one with the same colors pressed into your media mat in the same areas. Every single background is going to look different. The ink is going to work different. So they're really fun to do, especially if you just kind of like seeing what the ink does. You do definitely want to be drying the ink between layers so that those ink layers layer on top of each other and don't just blend and meld together. Once I have my background done, I trim that down to 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches, and then I stamp my sentiment on the front. For this particular sentiment, I used some black StazOn because of the metallic shimmer underneath there. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to smear in any way. And then I used some Ultra Clean to clean that ink off of my clear stamp. You don't want to leave StazOn ink on your clear stamps because it can start to erode them after a while. To tie in with the black in the horse die cut as well as the sentiment, I added a black mat behind here that was trimmed to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. That sentiment was stamped on the bottom also with my Misty stamping tool to make sure that I can get it where I want to make sure it was nice and even and level. And then I'm putting the horse on top of it. But you could reverse those. You could put the sentiment towards the top and have the horse below it if you wanted. And I love that about card baking, that you can get creative with it. So I just love how on this background or on this card, the horse is dark, but our background is a lot lighter. And again, it's got some gorgeous shimmer to it because of that mixed media distress style background. And then on this first card here, we have a light horse that has a darker background with some stars that are not only pressed, but they're also embossed. But we have that gorgeous shimmer behind them. It almost looks like a galaxy style background-ish. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate all the time that you spend with me. I hope you have a fantastic day and a fantastic holiday season.